the wake of growing food prices, we now have governments actually getting on board trying to help their citizens. But what is this actually telling us about what's going on in the rest of the world? Okay, so Sri Lanka has, the government has told its public sector employees they now get Friday off. So this is being done for, looks like, two reasons. One is because of the rising gas prices and to help alleviate some of the demand on the fuel prices. The other reason is what they specifically stated is they want their citizens to have Friday off for the next 3 months to go and be able to actually plant and grow their own food to alleviate the stresses on the food industry, right? The logistical supply of food. So the reason that this is so interesting is because Sri Lanka is kind of a bellwether, right? If you look at, like, third world nations and moving up in the spectrum, right, we would be kind of last on the list to take the biggest hits on these. Sri Lanka, obviously, kind of a third world nation at the bottom, they're going to be a lot more affected by the food shortages just because of the general poverty there, right? And so the fact that they're planning for this does it mean that we should be doing the same thing? Yeah, honestly, probably. But it does mean that they're actually trying to get ahead of this and try to plan a little bit to make sure that their citizens have the food that they need to get through some harder times. So let's look at the numbers here. So wholesale prices. So this is daily news. Wholesale prices rose a record of 8.6% over the last 12 months. We have got so Newsbreak is reporting on packaging size shrinking. So this is, it looks like they're talking about Gatorade. They're shrinking the packaging size, trying to make the bottles look bigger, so that they're using less gallons and less of their mix on the same person, basically. Grocery store prices are up 10.8%. That's the most in nearly 42 years. That's according to Breitbart. And that, I would have to look at how they're comparing, because I actually think it's probably worse than that. So anyways, it's we're seeing these drastic increases in numbers on the food side of things, and it's only going to continue to get worse. We've talked about what we're anticipating for 2023. I'm looking at how to actually invest in that, right? So I think the food prices are going to get astronomical. We're looking for our family about how we can put money in that, how to buy futures and that sort of thing, and doing some research on it. Because I think that it is going to, I think the food prices are going to get catastrophic, and I don't see any way around it. And I think even if people start producing their own food, we have got a year backlog before you're actually able to produce anything, if you know what you're doing. If you don't know what you're doing, you've got a 3-year backlog. If you're planting orchards now, you've got a 5 to a 7-year backlog before those actually start producing for you. So it takes time to build this. So yeah, there's a lot that we can do right now to get going and try to get ahead. But it's not like you're just going to go plant 50 fruit trees and all of a sudden by the end of the summer you're going to have all the fruit you can possibly use. For one, you're going to have a bunch of disease and pestilence that enter into that. You're going to lose a lot of different plants from drought and from poor soil and learning what you're doing, poor pruning practices, etc. And so you're going to end up having all these different problems with that orchard prior to them actually being full enough and developed enough that they can start producing you fruit, right? So the first year, you typically end up picking the fruit off and the blossoms off. That way they direct their energy into their roots. We just replanted a bunch of ours and moved them to the other side of the road, onto our plot of land on the other side of our easement. And when we did that, we had to pick everything up because we wanted them to put that energy into their rootstock and actually develop and get those roots down deep so they can get through droughts without having to be watered. Because when we have a drought, I don't want to use up the water in our aquifer because I don't know what's going to happen with that. Last thing we want to do is get a dry well, right? So when we have a drought, we still want to try to conserve that water usage. That's why we want to build organic matter into our soil here, so that way we hold a lot more moisture in the soil and we can get through those droughts and those hard times. That's why we want to develop good rootstock in our plants, and we take a little bit of time building a quality garden, a quality orchard, and it takes time to do that. It takes years to produce that, and it takes years to get the knowledge to be able to produce that. I grew up on a small farm in Idaho, right? A small little hobby farm in Idaho, and so I grew up doing the gardening work and still now running our own and growing our own food. It is a huge learning curve and trying to figure that out. So if you're coming from not knowing anything about it, you're not just going to throw seeds in the ground and have plants and be done with it. You have to, there is a ton that goes into this. How do you start your seeds? How much grow lights? What kind of grow lights do you need? How much do you need them to grow? Do you know how long to run those grow lights for every day? How long a rest do they need? What manner or method do you want to use on that? What temperature is your seed sprout at? What temperature do they grow best at? Do they need to be an early plant like lettuce to where they can get through and get grown before the summer heat comes in? Or can they be something that'll produce throughout the year like tomatoes? Can you grow them in a greenhouse? Can you not grow them in a greenhouse? Can you use hydroponics? Do you not use hydroponics? Do these have to be grown in soil that has high nitrogen? Is it going to be too much nitrogen? Is it going to burn their roots? What's eating my plants, right? We have bugs all over them. I have slugs. I have caterpillars. How do I treat this? How do I treat this without spraying a bunch of harmful chemicals on it? Which one of these is the weed again? Which one's the plant that I planted? Which one do I pull, right? These are all things that you have to learn and that you have to get to kind of a master level at very, very quickly in order to actually be able to produce a successful crop for you and your family. So it is not something to say, I'm going to start this when things get bad. You should have started it this year. If you have not already started it, you need to be making plans on how you're going to do it next year. And if there's anything that you can grow now that will grow in the fall, things that are kind of cold weather plants like cabbage, right? So you need to be looking at those things now and figuring out what exactly you need to do. Figuring out if you're already growing and you're not producing 100% of your own, how do I get this bigger and to produce 100% of our own? That's currently the stage that we're in. How do we get our garden bigger to where we can produce 100% of our own food? Whatever you can do to alleviate the stresses and the impact on the food chain is going to help as an overall. And so the more we plant, even if you're only planting tomatoes for yourself, that will certainly help the grand scheme of things. Which helps you inadvertently over time. But the bottom line is that we need to be producing our own food. We need to be at that point. We should be there now. If you're not there now, you need to be sprinting to try to get there. This is we're not in the marathon stage of this race yet. You're in the sprint. If you're not producing a substantial portion of your own food, so fruits, vegetables, and meat, then you either need to have a source, a capability of doing that. So local farmers, local ranchers, and local orchards. And then you need to be offsetting it no matter what subdivision you're in. I don't know of any subdivision that limits you on actually being able to do a garden or that could effectively actually apply that. Things like chickens are usually fairly easy to grow in subdivisions, even though most of them don't allow it. A lot of times, if you name it, you can get around that. So this is Betty, my chicken. It's now a pet, not livestock. But usually, people don't complain about hens. It's roosters they don't want, and that's what they mean when they put those in the HOA. So there are a lot of things that you can do to start producing some. If not a vast majority of your own food. And I do think that you have a responsibility to do as much as you can there. Again, you don't have to be a rancher. Nobody's suggesting that everybody go out and become a farmer to do this, but you certainly have the capabilities of having a backyard orchard, a backyard garden, something that helps offset that you can get some food, even if it's just 20% of your annual supply that you're providing yourself. You take those stresses off the food chain, and you are able to provide a healthier, more quality food for yourself. Plus, it's just enjoyable. It's good for you. It's good for the environment. It's good for de-stressing. Turn off the air conditioning, go outside and plant an orchard. The best thing you can do for global warming, right? So, thanks again for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you for staying with us, for subscribing, for liking, for sharing the videos. Helps us out a ton. We'll catch y'all tomorrow.